At an international airport in Canada, Ridley waits for takeoff alongside her father, but the pilot reveals that a malfunction has been detected, so they will be delayed a few hours. Realizing that they can't afford to waste so much time, Elliot decides to travel with his daughter in a rented vehicle, and together they set off on the road towards the mountains of the north. Halfway there, the man gets a call from his boss, who says he's extremely late. Desperate, the businessman says he's going to hurry, and begins to accelerate the vehicle more and more, while noticing that the call sign is failing. Seconds later, the call ends up dropping, and due to all that distraction, the man ends up colliding with a horse in the middle of the road, causing them to have an accident. After making sure his daughter is all right, Elliot checks to see what hit her, and noticing that the animal is still alive, he decides to grab one of the tools from the trunk to protect himself. As she gets closer, Ridley realizes that the creature is nothing less than a unicorn, and its wounds are releasing a blue blood never seen before. Annoyed at all the delay the situation is causing, Elliot walks away from the animal and tries to contact his boss. While observing the creature's suffering, Ridley notices that its horn is getting brighter and brighter, and decides to touch it. In doing so, the girl enters a state of magical illusion, where she can see the entire cosmos around her. However, before she could see what she wanted, Ridley was surprised by Elliot, who began to strike the unicorn's head with an iron bar repeatedly, eliminating the poor creature. Hours later, the pair arrive at a gigantic mansion in the mountains, and after parking their vehicle, which is hiding the body of the legendary animal, they enter the residence, where they are greeted by Shepard. Soon after, Belinda appears and says that although her husband is not in the best condition, he wants to talk to the businessman. So the pair are taken to meet Odell, who asks how the trip to his mansion went. Hearing this, Ridley begins to remember everything her father did, and noticing the girl's strange behavior, the old man asks what's going on. Trying not to cause trouble, the girl says she's fine and doesn't want to spend the weekend at Odell's house. Belinda then reveals that this won't be possible, as Elliot will have to stay there to take care of business. After leaving the room, Ridley runs to one of the mansion's windows, where she sees the vehicle that was involved in the accident earlier. Soon afterwards, the young woman goes into one of the bathrooms, but at that moment, the butlers decide to check the windows, causing them to worry about why the car has been damaged. As she dries her face, Ridley realizes that the towel has traces of the unicorn's blood on it, and as she looks in the mirror, she notices that her acne has been completely erased. At the same time, Elliot tries to read his contracts to Odell and his family, but he can't do it as his vision is starting to blur. Despite the unforeseen events, father and daughter try to pull themselves together to continue with their tasks, but what they don't know is that the unicorn is still alive inside the vehicle. Desperate, Ridley rushes to warn her father, saying she senses that something very bad is about to happen. However, Elliot doesn't believe his daughter's words and asks her to pull herself together immediately so that they can negotiate with the members of the tycoon family. In addition, the businessman promises that they will build a tomb for the animal, and after that, they should never comment on this incident again. At that moment, the pair hear the vehicle moving on its own, and Elliot tries to convince Odell to allow him to take his daughter away, so that they can continue the negotiation in a few hours. The problem is that the old man refuses to make exceptions, and during the discussion, the butlers warn Shepard about the businessman's car that is moving. Suspicious, the man asks what they are hiding, and noticing Elliot's nervousness, the family decides to go outside so that they can understand what is going on. Shortly afterwards, the car alarm goes off, and even after turning off the sound, the businessman is surprised by the sinister unicorn, which screams desperately as it tries to escape through the window. Quickly, one of the employees shoots the magical creature in the head, which is instantly eliminated, and after calming the situation, the group decides to investigate the body. Trying to figure out what species that strange horse might be, the family begins to discuss the animal's possible species, and Ridley says that it is nothing less than a unicorn. Upon hearing this, Odell approaches, and the girl reveals that after coming into contact with the blue liquid expelled by the creature's wounds on her face, she noticed that her acne had disappeared. Intrigued, the old man asks how Ridley is feeling, and if she has noticed any side effects in her body. Soon after, Elliot reports that his eyesight seems to have improved, and not only that, but his chronic allergies also seem to have disappeared. With all those reports, Ridley explains that they should call some organization that takes care of wild animals, but Odell says they won't be able to do that. Belinda says that if they decide to call the authorities, they could attract the attention of people with bad intentions, so all they have to do for now is find a way to honor the poor unicorn. At dusk, Elliot asks his daughter why she was behaving like that, and Ridley tells him that the legendary animal wasn't hurting her, but showing her something completely surprising. Irritated, the businessman says that he can't lose his clients because of something crazy the girl has done, and when she hears this, she becomes enraged and throws her father out of her room. Trying to reverse what he has just said, Elliot admits that he has always wanted the best for his daughter, since after her mother perished, she had no one else in her life but him. However, Ridley doesn't answer her father and stays silent while she looks at the photos of her mother on her cell phone. While doing so, the young woman notices a unicorn in the photographs and uses her laptop to research these creatures in the records. Ridley discovers that the legendary animal was captured thousands of years ago, and after much mistreatment and punishment, the creature ended up eliminating everyone around it, causing a catastrophe in the village. Outside, Elliot notices that the tarpaulin covering the animal's body is moving, but before he can check what's going on, Shepard asks him to meet him. So the businessman goes to the young man, but at that moment, they hear a noise around the forest, and as they are frightened, the men decide to go in. Soon afterwards, a great aurora borealis forms in the sky, and during her sleep, Ridley begins to dream of something running through the forest. Suddenly, the young woman is woken up by a pair of scientists, and after capturing Elliot, they take the pair to a laboratory, where they inspect their bodies alongside the body of the unicorn. A few minutes later, one of the researchers gives a talk about everything they've discovered so far, and says that after studying the creature's horn, they realized that it was what caused the magical healing in the animal. In addition, Odell says that this could be his last chance to find a solution to his cancer, and asks his specialists to start the procedures. So the scientists scrape off part of the unicorn's horn and put the substance into the old man's medication, which is kept under observation in his room. The problem is that the levels of electromagnetic radiation in the animal's body keep rising, and before they can miss their chance, the pair decide to take another sample of the creature's blood. Saddened by everything she is witnessing, Ridley decides to go for a walk in the woods around the mansion, so that she can distract herself a little. During her exploration, the young woman begins to hear frightening screams coming from deep in the woods, and runs scared towards the mansion. Hours later, Elliot pays a visit to Odell in his room, and is pleased to notice that the old man is slowly being cured by the effects of the unicorn's magic liquid. Meanwhile, Ridley continues her research into these mysterious beings, and Shepard suggests that the girl prepare a formal presentation to explain everything she has discovered about the mythological creatures. At that moment, the young man comes across his father walking alone through the mansion, and everyone is amazed to see that Odell has even managed to grow a few years younger. Determined to continue his treatment with the unicorn's healing magic, the tycoon continues to use the substance in his body. Concerned, Ridley decides to leave the premises, and the old man orders his employees to try to replicate the compound immediately. However, the scientist explains that this won't be possible, since that blue liquid shouldn't even exist, as its chemical composition is completely new and incomprehensible. Annoyed, the old man orders his employee to continue trying to find a way to replicate the substance, so that they have the most expensive and valuable compound in the world. Hours later, Odell and his family make several calls to find buyers for their new discovery, and Ridley asks what is going on in that place. Excited, Elliot says that he has never seen so much money in his life, and that they will have a new life after closing the sales contracts. Odell then reunites with the rest of his family, and together they celebrate the biggest profit they've ever made, as well as the possibility of living forever with the help of magical rejuvenation. Desperate, Ridley warns the family that they not take advantage of the unicorn's healing abilities under any circumstances. The girl explains that in the past, those creatures were seen as divine beings, since they were able to cure any kind of illness or injury, but at a certain point, they became extremely hostile. She also uses the images collected to reinforce her points, saying that thanks to human wickedness, this process has always been repeated. During the discussion, Odell becomes increasingly angry, scolding Elliot for his daughter's behavior, and Ridley is devastated to hear her father accepting all the humiliations said by the tycoons. Feeling betrayed, the girl returns to the vehicle and decides to spend a night there, while Odell and his family watch the scientists preparing the unicorn's body so that they can transport it in their negotiations. Suddenly, Ridley notices that her cell phone has stopped working, and at the same time, the tunnel in which the animal is being taken runs out of power. Confused, the scientists analyze their Geiger counter and realize that the unicorn's radiation levels are getting higher and higher. Realizing that something seems to be wrong, Odell orders Elliot to go and check what's going on, and although reluctant, the man obeys his boss. Outside, Ridley gets out of the vehicle, and after meeting up with the other family butlers, they come across the great magical aurora borealis stretching across the sky. At the same time, the power comes back on, but at that moment, one of the employees is hit by a large horn, which opens up a huge wound in his chest. Shortly afterwards, the horn comes out of the body of its victim, who ends up losing his life in a few seconds, leaving everyone terrified as they watch the silhouette of a huge creature circling the tunnel. Shepard quickly pulls the stretcher with the unicorn's body back to mansion, and the butlers use their guns to shoot at the monster, making him even angrier. When he comes across his lost daughter outside, Elliot shouts for her to get in the car, saying he'll be there in a few seconds. However, before she can react, Ridley is surprised by the monster, which begins to hit the vehicle with its head. Trying to save his daughter, Elliot pulls the girl back, allowing the butlers to get closer and continue firing in the direction of their target. At that moment, the pair realize that this is none other than a unicorn, who has appeared to punish humans after their mistreatment of one of his kind. Soon after, one of the security guards is thrown into the vehicle, knocking Ridley to the ground and witnessing the creature finish off its victim with one of its hooves, destroying his head. Panicked, the young woman tries to keep quiet, and Elliot uses the car as cover to hide from the monster unicorn's field of vision. Realizing that her father won't be able to avoid the monster for long, Ridley runs towards one of the gates, attracting the attention of the creature, which chases her furiously. Noticing that this is the girl who has communicated with one of its kind, the legendary animal makes its horn start to glow, as if it wanted to communicate with the young woman. However, before it can do so, the creature is hit by one of the employees' shotgun blasts, causing it to flee seriously wounded. Hours later, the group gathers to try to understand what has just happened, and Ridley tells them that after coming into contact with one of the unicorn's horns, she felt a kind of connection with them. The young woman explains that the creature may have come to them to retrieve one of its young, and so that they don't lose anyone else, they should release it and leave these magical animals alone. Upon hearing this, Shepard says that this won't be possible, because now that they know there are several unicorns out there, they must hunt each one down so that they can get richer and richer. Odell then gathers his security guards to begin another hunt for the magical creature, and Ridley begs his father not to accompany the group on this evil mission. Despite her request, Elliot orders his daughter to wait at the mansion, and sets off towards the forest with the old man and his security guards. In the living room, Ridley comes across Shepard trying to convince the scientist to saw off the horn of the captured unicorn, just after she has stolen one of the vials of blood collected from the creature. Minutes later, the young man pours the substance on his desk and ends up consuming it all, causing him to have a magical vision that leaves him amazed. In the middle of the forest, Odell follows the blue tracks left by the unicorn's wounds, when suddenly, they come across the animal lying among the trees, and notice that its horn is glowing in the laboratory. The scientist tries to saw off the horn on the unicorn, which begins to glow, but she decides to continue, managing to remove it without difficulty. At this point, Ridley tries to send several messages to her father, ordering them to retreat immediately, but Odell refuses and says that they will remain in their search. Just as they were about to capture the unicorn, one of the hunters realized that the radiation levels in the area had risen, and suddenly the woman ended up being swallowed by one of the monsters. Soon afterwards, the group begins to see several creatures running around them, and Odell tries to shoot at his targets to scare them off. Realizing that his shots are having no effect, the old man slowly moves away from his team, and using his thermal vision goggles, Elliot can see the unicorns running through the forest. Suddenly, one of the hunters is hit, but before he can help him, the businessman is surprised by another of the creatures, which eliminates the security guard with its horn. Desperate, Elliot runs back to the mansion with Odell, and no matter how hard they try, the pair can't hold the door, causing the animal to enter the house. In order to survive, the men run away, but are quickly cornered by another of the unicorns, who appears right next to Ridley. At that moment, Elliot realizes that the creatures are focused on Odell, allowing him to get away from them and reunite with his daughter. After being surrounded by the monsters, the old man tries to calm them down and asks them to allow him to touch one of their horns. However, it turned out to be a trap, and as it approached, the unicorn went through Odell's head, leaving everyone in shock. Quickly, the survivors lock all the doors of the mansion, and Ridley tries to convince everyone to return the foal to its parents, because only then will they be able to end the curse. Despite this, none of the tycoons listen to the young woman, and Shepard orders Elliot to call the police immediately. The problem is that the unicorns manage to cut the power to the house, causing the signal to be interrupted. After a long discussion, the group decides that Griff will be responsible for opening the gates from the outside, while the scientist will transport the stretcher with the animal's body. So the woman keeps the unicorn's horn in her protection capsule, and Elliot offers to help her on her mission. Noticing the businessman's kindness, the scientist opens the case with the vials of the sprayed substance and suggests that he take one of the containers so that he can protect his life and that of his daughter. The group then begins their plan, and Griff opens the gates as quickly as possible, while the woman is surprised by the pair of unicorns, who approach her. When they notice that their baby is no longer alive, the creatures become furious, causing the scientist to run desperately towards the exit. However, after arriving at the gate, the woman realizes that the unicorns have disappeared, and before she can react, she is surprised by the creatures, who carry out a coordinated attack on their victim. After witnessing the terrifying scene, Griff flees in terror, leaving the rest of the survivors trapped in the mansion. Due to the large quantities of pulverized horn he has consumed, Shepard begins to go mad, saying that they should use Ridley as bait to attract the unicorns and escape from that place. Realizing that the family of tycoons are nothing more than a bunch of lunatics, Elliot asks his daughter to accompany him, because it's time for them to escape that mansion together. Before they can do so, the pair are intercepted by Shepard, who tries to grab Ridley, but at that moment, the group is met by the unicorn. Noticing that they are surrounded by the creatures, the survivors split up, trying to hide around the place while being hunted by the monsters. So that they can retrieve the unicorn's horn, Shepard throws an object away, distracting the animal and allowing it to retrieve the capsule. However, when he meets his mother in Odell's office, the young man realizes that the capsule is empty. In one of the rooms, Elliot reveals to Ridley that he stole the unicorn's horn because he had promised his late wife that he would always take care of the girl, which is why he decided to betray his boss. Meanwhile, Belinda and Shepard try to sneak around the mansion in search of a way out, but as they approach one of the walls, the woman has her body pierced by the horn of one of the unicorns. Immediately afterwards, the woman is pulled to the other side by her leg, allowing the dark horse to take several bites and throw its victim all over the place. Trying to get rid of the creature, Belinda uses one of Odell's oxygen tanks and screams for her son to end it all before it's too late. Desperate, Shepard picks up his bow and arrow, and after climbing to the second floor, he prepares to fire a flaming shot at the creature. The problem is that the young man doesn't have the courage to do it, so he leaves while his mother is attacked by the unicorn, finishing off yet another victim. At the same time, Elliot realizes that they have been found by the other unicorn, and so that he can protect Ridley, he locks her outside. Now that he is alone, the businessman opens the living room doors and runs around the mansion while being chased by the animal. Soon after, he sets off towards the forest, where he continues to flee from the enraged creature, using the surrounding trees to dodge its attacks. Ridley then jumps into the garden and runs to the parking lot, but before she can escape, she is surprised by Shepard, who leads her to the body of the unicorn. After a few seconds, the youngsters are found by one of the living creatures, and upon recognizing Ridley, the unicorn lies down on the ground. Seizing his chance, Shepard runs to tie up the monster, but at that moment, Elliot appears, accompanied by the other unicorn, causing the young man to back away. Realizing that Ridley is the same person who had communicated with their baby, the creature lies down next to the young woman, and the man rushes off so that he can imprison the pair of legendary animals. Excited, Shepard tells him that they could get rich off those animals, but Elliot refuses and stabs his enemy with the unicorn's horn. At the same time, the young man uses his arrow to attack the businessman, who falls to the ground. In a panic to heal his wounds, Shepard crawls to the fallen horn, but ends up being kicked by one of the unicorns, causing him to be thrown away and eliminated instantly. Due to his injuries, Elliot ends up perishing in his daughter's arms, but at that moment, the pair of magical animals pick up the businessman's body and place it next to their perished baby. Soon afterwards, the unicorns put their horns against each other, creating a huge dome of regeneration and causing the wounds on their bodies to begin to heal. Thanks to this, Elliot ends up having the same vision that Ridley had witnessed, and after being completely invigorated, the group is knocked down by the energy pulse of the creatures, who flee towards the forest. Relieved, Ridley hugs her father, but during their celebration, the pair are surprised by Griff, who has returned in a car. In the end, Elliot and his daughter are arrested, accused of various crimes and of having eliminated the family in the mansion. At that moment, the vehicles are intercepted by the group of unicorns, and as a thank you, they prepare to destroy the vehicle so that Elliot and Ridley can finally be free.
Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.